All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. I want you to think back to your last big argument. You know the one. You walked away feeling super frustrated, just replaying the whole thing in your head 1,000 times, coming up with all those perfect comebacks way too late. Well, what if I told you that you didn't actually lose that argument because you were wrong? You lost because, like most of us, you just haven't been taught the hidden technology of high-stakes communication. So today we're doing a full summary of the groundbreaking book, Crucial Conversations. We're going to upgrade your communication operating system so you can use this for your own videos, your career, and honestly, your whole life. And to kick things off, get this absolutely staggering statistic. Less than 2% of our conversations determine 90% of our outcomes in life. Let that sink in. 90%. We're talking about that brand sponsor you couldn't quite close, that creative partnership that just completely fell apart, or even that viral video idea that got totally scrapped. If you trace them back, they almost all come down to just a handful of conversations that went completely sideways.
So here is the exact roadmap for our OS upgrade today. We're going to start with the high-stakes communication trap. Then we'll explore the pool of shared meaning and dive into creating psychological safety. After that, we'll cover mastering your internal stories, deploy the state communication formula, and finally, turning talk into action.
Let's jump into Section 1, the high-stakes communication trap. Okay, so what exactly makes a conversation crucial? Well, it's basically a perfect storm of three things. The stakes are high, opinions differ, and emotions are running really hot. It's not just some casual chat about, ad revenue. It's sitting down and telling your co-host that you absolutely hate their new video idea, all while anxiety is just completely flooding your brain. So right now, I want you to think of 3 specific conversations you are currently avoiding. Got them in your head? Because honestly, the very fact that you're dodging them means your subconscious already knows they're crucial.
See, when we face these high-pressure moments, we experience what's called the amygdala hijack. Our brain senses danger and literally forces our IQ to drop so it can prep for fight or flight. And because of that, we instinctively take one of 2 super destructive paths. We either choose silence, meaning we mask, avoid, or just totally withdraw, or we choose violence, which is when we try to control, label, or attack the other person. Both of these are just defense mechanisms, but they absolutely destroy our influence.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the pool of shared meaning.
You see, conversations are not just about taking turns talking at each other. They're actually about adding to this sort of invisible pool of shared meaning between you and someone else. When that pool is full of all the relevant facts, feelings, and experiences, you end up making brilliant decisions together. But, and this is a big but, when silence or violence drains that pool, collaborative problem-solving fails roughly 70% of the time. Mastering dialogue is all about keeping this core patch of our OS running. It's about keeping that pool full even when emotions are running super hot.
Which brings us right into Section 3, creating psychological safety.
Here's a huge light bulb moment. People don't actually get defensive over what you say. They get defensive because they don't feel safe. There are 2 core pillars of psychological safety: mutual purpose and mutual respect. If the other person genuinely believes you care about their goals and that you value them as a human being, they can hear almost any feedback you throw at them. But if either of those pillars is missing, even the most polite, gentle suggestion is going to feel like a vicious personal attack.
So the big question is, how can you be 100% honest and 100% respectful at the exact same time? Well, the secret is completely rejecting what the authors call the fool's choice. That's the absolute lie telling you that you have to choose between telling the truth and keeping the peace. Because usually if you buy into that, you end up with neither. Instead, true masters of communication instantly rebuild safety when it drops. They use immediate apologies if they mess up, and they use contrast statements, which is basically clarifying what they don't mean right alongside what they do mean. It's a total game changer.
Let's transition to Section 4, mastering your internal stories. Now, this is fascinating. In mere milliseconds, our brains can spin up incredibly toxic narratives. Like an observable fact, let's say a major sponsor ghosting your email, instantly gets spun into one of 3 stories. Victim stories, where we tell ourselves we're totally innocent and they're guilty. Villain stories, where perfectly reasonable people are suddenly painted as evil monsters. Or helpless stories, where we convince ourselves we've tried everything and nothing's ever going to change. These internal stories are what create the intense emotions that end up justifying our absolute worst behaviors. So the next time you feel a really strong negative emotion bubbling up, I challenge you to become a story detective. Actually, scratch that. You need to be a scientist with your own brain. Just pause for a second and ask yourself,
What is my story here? What am I pretending not to know about my own role in this mess? Why would a reasonable, rational person do what they just did? By asking yourself these things, you take your furious assumptions and you turn them into curious hypotheses. You shift completely from an attack mindset into a learning mindset.
Now for the practical part. Section 5, the state communication formula.
All right, this right here is your exact step-by-step protocol for expressing difficult truths. First, share your facts. These are observable and totally non-controversial. Second, tell your story. This is where you explain what those facts actually mean to you, presenting it as your interpretation, not the absolute truth of the universe. Third, ask for others' paths. Genuinely invite their perspective in. Fourth, talk tentatively. Use phrases like "I'm thinking" instead of "the fact of the matter is." And finally, encourage testing, which means actively inviting them to challenge your viewpoint.
When you actually implement this formula, your influence just skyrockets. Research shows that using state creates such profound understanding and safety that agreement rates jump to a massive 85%. Think about that. You're not forcing agreement here, you're just creating a shared pool of meaning that is so clear, the right path forward naturally becomes obvious to everyone in the room.
And finally, we arrive at Section 6, turning talk into action.
Because, let's be real, talk without action is basically just really expensive therapy, right? To get things done, you have 4 decision-making methods. Command is for when the expertise is super clear. Consult is for when you definitely need buy-in, but one person still makes the final call. Vote is used when efficiency matters more than unity. And consensus is for those times when everyone must be fully committed. But here is a massive warning. Confusing consult with consensus will destroy trust way faster than a bad decision ever could. Always decide how you're going to decide before you even start.
And once that decision is finally made, you absolutely must deploy the magic trilogy of accountability. Who is going to do the task? Exactly what will they do, and when will it be done? Saying something vague like, "We really need better video edits," is just a wish. But saying Sarah is going to deliver the rough cut by Tuesday at 5 p.m., now that is an action. Specifically is literally the bridge between good intentions and lasting reality.
To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. We've just summarized an entire framework that can completely revolutionize how you communicate. But look, information without implementation is just entertainment, right? So which tool are you actually going to practice in your next crucial conversation? Just pick one. Is it going to be identifying the amygdala hijack, working on mutual purpose, or maybe trying out the state formula? I challenge you to practice it in that exact specific conversation you've been putting off. Because if you do, it just might permanently transform your life.